Hello. Hey there, guys. So I want to thank you, as always, for joining today's Wednesday live stream, of course. So, of course, I was able to make it on time. So I do appreciate you guys for being patient with me. I was want to make sure that everything was on time. Um, Keep in mind, if you do notice a difference in how the video, if it stutters or anything, just let me know. Um, Wi-Fi has kind of been all over the place here recently. So if the video does stutter, just sort of let me know. But hopefully everything should be fine. So before I get started, as always, guys, you can visit my website, bponlinefitness.com. I will have the actual address at the end of this live stream to where you can see what that address is. But again, it's bponlinefitness.com. Ton of information on there related to online coaching, free fitness blog, as well as being able to sign up to the email list that I send out each week on with a newsletter. I also send out notifications on any live streams that I may do throughout the week, or I'll also send out any offers that I may have with online coaching. Right now, I'm actually doing 30% off online coaching. I'm going to start promoting that a little bit more. I haven't promoted it as much here lately because I've had quite a bit going on. So I'm going to promote that so that more people will hear about it. Of course, if you're interested in joining online coaching, feel free to let me know or leave a comment or anything of that sort. And I'll do everything I can to explain everything that I have to offer, all the tools that I have to offer, and things of that nature. So definitely reach out if that's something that you're interested in. So let's go ahead and get started with talking about today's topic, which is bilateral and unilateral training. So I know that these two words sound kind of large, but they're really simple once we start to dissect what these two terms mean. So these are the topics that we're going to discuss basically in order here. And this is going to be the introduction. We're going to do an introduction to bilateral and unilateral training. Going to discuss the benefits of bilateral training itself, the benefits of unilateral training, and some of the common bilateral exercises as well as common unilateral exercises. Again, I know these terms sound pretty large and they seem like something that may be just too out there, but really these are simple terms and they're great terms to be aware of when it comes to your fitness goals. They're going to play a big role when it comes to any particular goal that you're working on, especially if your goal is muscle gain. I think this is something that you will definitely benefit from learning more about what these terms mean and how they relate to training, weightlifting, weight training, things of that nature. So let's go ahead and get started and talking about sort of just introducing what bilateral and unilateral training is. So there's different ways that bilateral and unilateral training are, that they're opposite, are the different aspects that come with these types of training methods. So the benefits each method offers for strength balance and injury prevention. So when we're looking at both of these methods, they're going to offer the same great benefits, which is strength balance and that injury prevention. We're going to discuss also when to use each type of training in your fitness routine. So by the end of the live stream, you'll have a clear understanding of how to incorporate both into your workouts to optimize performance and target muscle imbalances. So this is not really a necessary downside to both of these training methods. However, one method is going to be a little bit more beneficial to what you're focusing on depending on your goal. So just keep that in mind that these are both great types of training methods. I use both of these training methods in my workouts. Depending on what I'm focusing on that particular day or what my goal is at that time period, I'm going to focus on either of these types of training methods. So the benefits of bilateral training. So bilateral exercises engage larger muscle groups, allowing you to lift heavier loads compared to unilateral movements. This leads to greater overall strength development, particularly in compound movements like deadlifts and squats. Now, you've likely heard me talk about compound and isolation. And when I'm talking about compound and isolation, there is somewhat of a connection with those terms as well as bilateral and unilateral. So basically, to sum up what these two terms means is unilateral is focusing on one side of the body, whereas bilateral is focusing on both sides of the body. That's basically the simple way to understand what these training methods are. And you're going to have a clear picture of what these methods are as we get to the types of exercises that involve these training methods. And you're going to know, okay, that makes sense. Because I know right now it doesn't seem clear what we're speaking about, but you will understand. It's very simple to understand once we go through all of these different terms. So going back here to the benefits of bilateral training. So training both sides of your body together ensures that develops evenly, and this helps to reduce the risk of any muscular imbalances, which lead to poor posture and injury over time. One of the big things that come with these types of training methods are helping to prevent those muscle imbalances. That's the big thing that you're going to notice with these training methods. So, bilateral movements, especially in lower body exercises like squats and power cleans, are excellent for generating explosive power that makes bilateral training ideal for athletes who need to develop speed and agility in their sports. So, power cleans, if you've not heard of that, this is basically a powerlifting type of exercise. So it's not something that not everybody's going to use, but this is a very quick sort of very power-based exercise that relates to using the barbell. So that's what the power clean is. It's something that I would have to show to you as like a video or, a demonstration of what that is. But that's basically a training method that is more geared towards people who power lift. So that's what a power clean is. So that's just going to be, just keep in mind that that's a more intense exercise that not everybody who's focusing on, particularly on muscle gain, is going to be doing that type of exercise. But however, squats, of course, is something that a lot of people know. So an exercise that is more performance based, like power clean, and exercise like a squat, both of these are going to be in the same sort of camp. And I know that sounds like that's two completely opposite sides, but it's mainly because of what this training method focuses on. So a squat, even though it's lower intensity, a squat is still going to be considered bilateral because you're using both sides of your body in order to lift that weight. Same with a power clean. You may be doing a more intense exercise with a power clean, but it's still going to be under that same umbrella of a bilateral base workout. So just keep that in mind that this is separate from intensity. This is focusing on, the muscles that are being engaged versus the intensity of the workout. So it's going to range depending on the intensity of the workout with these types of training methods. So let's move on to unilateral training. So we talked about bilateral, which of course is focusing on both sides of the body being engaged in order to perform the workout. So unilateral training is the direct opposite, where we're focusing on targeting one side of the body. This type of training method is more focused on, it really is geared towards helping to prevent any further muscle imbalances, helping to more isolate a particular part of the body versus bilateral. This is more of something that you would focus on helping to build more balance in your physique when you're incorporating unilateral based training. So, some of the benefits of unilateral training includes correcting asymmetries by focusing on each side independently. It enhances balance strength development, engages the core more effectively for stabilization during unilateral movements. One thing you're going to notice a lot of times with unilateral based movements is that you're going to have to really use your core very often with these movements because you're focusing on one side of the body. Your core is that foundational aspect of your body that helps you perform the workout more effectively. That's one thing that a lot of people don't understand when it comes to the core, and talking about the core is a whole nother subject in itself. But keep in mind that your core is being engaged a lot of times in unilateral movements because it is your foundational part of your body. It help keeps your body stable. Like for example, if you're doing, an exercise on one side of the body, like maybe like a row, like a lot of times I do a bench row and I'm focusing on, targeting my back and rowing the dumbbell up. Whereas on the other side, I have to keep, or on the other side of my body, I have to keep it stable in order to continuously do that exercise effectively. So that's just what you need to understand is that you're going to have to use a lot more stability and core engagement in this type of workout is what I'm trying to get across, if that makes sense. Another thing is this promotes better overall core strength and posture because you're using that core more often. You are going to build more core strength, even though you're not targeting the core in a workout. Like for example, any workout that you may be targeting, like one side of the body, like when you're doing a row and you target in one side of the body, one side of your back, you're still going to engage that core at some point because you got to keep your body stable. So at the same time, you are targeting that back muscle, of course, but you're still building core strength at the same time because that muscle is being engaged in order to stabilize yourself. So keep that in mind. Another thing, too, is that this mimics daily activities and athletic movements. So you're able to effectively perform more of your daily activities easier and more effectively when you include this type of training in your workouts. And of course, it helps to develop coordination, balance, and control. That's the big thing with this type of training method is a lot of coordination and balance. And that's what you're going to notice, with this versus bilateral. Whereas bilateral, it is more focused on building your overall strength, whereas this unilateral training is more focused on really isolating the body a little bit more, being able to, you know, be more stable, build more of your coordination and balance. That's what this type of training method involves. So going forward, let's talk about the benefits of bilateral training. So again, this allows for the use of heavier loads, engaging more muscle fibers. So that's the one thing that you keep in mind with bilateral training. It promotes overall strength development across large muscle groups. Bilateral movements like squats, deadlifts, and bench presses enhance power and explosive strength. These, of course, are ideal for building foundational strength and improving athletic performance. And you're sort of noticing a rhythm here that bilateral is more of the strength and performance-based type of training, whereas unilateral is more focusing on your stability, your coordination, your balance. That's basically the big difference between these two methods. So, again, going back to the benefits of bilateral training, it is engaging multiple muscles simultaneously, leading to improved hypertrophy and muscle growth. And this training method, of course, is efficient for training large muscle groups. A lot of bilateral workouts, most of them are going to involve, a lot of them would be like lower body workouts because your legs are one of the largest muscles in your body. There's multiple muscles that make up the legs, such as the quads, hamstrings, glutes, adductors, abductors. A lot of those muscles are a part of the lower body, but a lot of those muscles have to be used to perform, some bilateral movements or compound based movements like squats, like deadlifts. Even though you are targeting, even like for example with squat, you're primarily targeting your quads when you're doing squats. However, your body is using your hamstrings and your glutes at the same time when you're performing that workout. So those supporting muscles are working just as hard, as the quads themselves. So that's again, bilateral is again focusing on both sides of the body, using a lot more, larger muscle groups when you're doing this type of training method. And it's more intense type of exercise. We're focusing more on that hypertrophy and muscle growth and, more of the performance aspect of things with bilateral training. So biomechanical difference between unilateral and bilateral training. So I know that I sort of touched on that a little bit, the difference between these two, but I want to give you a clear picture and more of a, concise understanding of what these training methods are side by side. So again, I did touch on these, but I do want to go over this again. So bilateral exercises is both limbs working together, allowing for greater total force production. Unilateral is one limb works independently, requiring more stabilizer muscles to maintain balance. In the bilateral exercises, you're activating larger muscle groups more effectively, such as the quads, the hamstrings, the chest, and the back. Again, those are larger muscle groups that are being used with bilateral exercises. And then in unilateral exercises, you're increasing engagement of the core and smaller stabilizing muscles, such as the gluteus medius and the obliques. These are smaller muscles. The obliques, of course, are the muscles of the core. They are on the side of your core muscles. So it's not your main ab muscles, but the side muscles of your core area. That's what the obliques are. And the gluteus medius is, of course, a muscle in the glutes. It's a smaller muscle, whereas the gluteus maximus, of course, is the larger muscle of the glutes. So that's what you're going to notice. Smaller muscles are going to be engaged with unilateral, larger muscles with bilateral exercises. So core muscles work to stabilize, but with less engagement compared to unilateral movements when it comes to bilateral exercises. Unilateral exercises reduce compensatory movement as well as helping the stronger limb enhancing of overall symmetry. So again, you're sort of noticing the difference between these two. Bilateral is both limbs working together. Unilateral is one limb working independently and helping to stabilize the body. So that's sort of what the difference is here. I hope that this sort of gives you a clear picture of what these two training methods are, and then it helps you understand a little bit better. I'm somebody who's very visual, so that's why a lot of my stuff is very descriptive in a certain way because I like to be clear with what I'm trying to say, and so that you're able to understand a little bit better. Because again, with a lot of people, I know not a lot of us are very when we're like looking at certain things, we like it explained a little bit better, a little bit more into detail instead of something that's really vague. And that's what I like to get across with, talking about these things, especially when you hear these types of terms, you're like, well, why does that matter? And that's what I try to do with these, streams and talking about a lot of these different fitness topics that kind of have these big words when really if you just sit and sort of dissect them and sort of understand them a little bit better, they're easy to understand. It's just the terms themselves just seem sort of intimidating to understand. Um, but understanding these things helps. It helps you to know, okay, what do I need to focus on? Do I need to prioritize my workouts based on this or based on that? And that's what I'm trying to sort of clear up here. Because these methods are going to be focused on what you're focusing on. Do you want to build more stability in parts of your body? Is there any muscles that you lack stability or any muscles that you feel are imbalanced? Then you want to focus more on the unilateral side of training. Do you want to build more overall strength? Do you want to build more of your overall performance? Do you want to, focus primarily on that hypertrophy and building, those large muscle groups? Then you're focusing on bilateral. So again, it's just dissecting these things and sort of understanding them a little bit better. Okay, going back to what we were talking about. So, what are the common bilateral and unilateral mistakes from these training methods? So, using too much weight in compromising form. So, these can go with either sort of side, um, with either type of training method, but these are some common mistakes that a lot of people can perform when doing these types of training methods. And this is a big one is using too much weight. So lifting too heavy can cause proper form, leading to joint strain and injuries. So this is such as rounding the back during a deadlift. That's an example of, if your back is being rounded when you're performing that workout, then you likely have too heavy a weight when you're lifting that weight. So prioritize technique over weight. Focus on maintaining a neutral spine and proper posture during bilateral lifts and gradually increase the load. And this can kind of, again, work the same with the unilateral movement. You can still compromise form even if you're lifting heavy with unilateral. And really, you need to focus a lot on form, even more so when you're doing unilateral exercises because you have to be more balanced and more coordinated with your movements. So that's the difference there is that it's a little bit more important to maintain form and lifting adequate weight with that movement as well. So unequal force distribution. So mistake is one side of the body may dominate the movement, causing uneven force distribution. So one leg doing more during a squat. That's sort of an example of that muscle imbalance, kind of like what I've talked about earlier. And what you need to do is, of course, be mindful of symmetrical movement. One thing that you can help um, to really prevent this sort of asymmetry is to really focus on the mind muscle connection, focus on the muscle you are targeting as you're going through the form of that particular workout. Of course, as I have mentioned here, using mirrors or record yourself to check that both sides are contributing equally. That could be a great way to sort of identify, you know, what you may need to fix if you feel like you're not effectively engaged in that muscle. Being able to pay attention to how you're performing that workout is going to make a big difference. I record a lot of my workouts and, I do it, of course, yes, to post it on social media, but it does help in a way to sort of notice what I'm doing and to sort of be more mindful of that form. So even, of course, if you're not posting videos on social media, record yourself performing workouts. Sort of look at those, sort of pay attention to your form. It gives you a better idea of how well you're engaging the muscle just by looking at it. Another thing too is, of course, when you're in front of a mirror, when you're doing workouts, a lot of times in gyms, there's around like the dumbbells, there's always usually a mirror in front of you. So use that to your advantage. Pay attention to what you're doing with the mirror and just see, how effectively you're targeting that muscle that you want to target. That's another way to sort of prevent those imbalances. So, of course, incorporate unilateral exercises to address those imbalances. That's what unilateral exercises are primarily focused on, is helping to address those imbalances that you may have. So, the next 2 points, or the next points I want to go over, is sort of an example training plan of these, training methods. And you're going to see, sort of notice the difference between these two. So, for example, with a bilateral based, training method, you're going to be focused on, exercises like a barbell bench press, pull ups, seated overhead press, bent over barbell row. And you're noticing, there's various splits and you're seeing a lot of large muscles being targeted together. For example, barbell bench press, the chest, shoulders, and triceps are all being worked. You have a lot of muscle groups being worked in these workouts. Pull ups, you've got your lats, your biceps, your upper back are all being engaged to do this workout. Overhead press, or seated overhead press, I should say, your shoulders and triceps, large muscle groups are being worked. Barbell bent over row, or bent over barbell row, upper and mid back, well as your rear delts and biceps. So you've got all of these different, muscles being worked in these particular exercises. So that's what you're going to see a lot of times with bilateral based training. So I didn't show unilateral training. I just showed one side. But keep in mind, let me sort of explain what you would likely see in a unilateral based exercise. So with unilateral exercises, you would mostly see exercises that would target like a single arm row, like say for example, a single arm dumbbell row you would like to see with a unilateral exercise. Any exercise that's going to be oscillating more of a muscle, like for example, if you were doing more of a tricep extension, that's going to be focusing on oscillating the triceps. Bicep curl would be sort of an example of a unilateral movement because you're more oscillating the biceps in particular. Whether it's your left or right side, you're focusing on one side. So keep in mind it's going to be more oscillating a particular side. Another workout would be an isometric bicep curl. And this workout is a little bit more challenging than some of the other ones, but basically what you're doing with this workout is you're still oscillating one bicep, but you're keeping one of your biceps in a more contracted position while you're doing a curl in the other arm. So you're just having your biceps contracted and then you're curling with the other arm while keeping this other arm sort of in a just a contracted position, if that makes sense. So that's an example of unilateral exercise. And I'm sorry that I didn't include that on here, but they're pretty self-explanatory once you start to understand. So you're kind of seeing the difference here um, with these particular workouts. So I do have a message here or a comment here from Wayne that I do want to address before ending this. So Wayne said, when recovering from an injury on one side of the body, the left shoulder, using unilateral training, is it okay to use different amounts of weight on each side, or should you lift less weight on the healthy side to match what you're lifting on the recovering side? So when it comes to that, what I would say is really focus on trying to balance those as much as possible. So I would say focus on that weaker side. Really focus on prioritizing that side a little bit more. So doing more exercises that focus on targeting that muscle more to sort of balance it out. Now you can, of course, still target the other side, of course, but I would say prioritize a little bit more of your exercises around that muscle so that you can build more strength in that muscle. However, still focus on your other muscles at the same time. But that's what I would say is focus on really balancing that out, really continuing to build that muscle a little bit more often so that it can be at least closer to the same level as the other muscles that you're targeting, if that makes sense. So that's what I would say to focus on. Um, you know, again, you would still use a weight that you're comfortable with, but just really prioritize that a little bit more outside of your other workouts, but still engage those muscles. So I hope that sort of answers your question and that makes sense. Because I know with something like that, it can kind of be difficult to know what to do because you kind of have that imbalance. But that's what you need to do is just sort of prioritize that side of the body a little bit more, while still doing your other exercises that you may be stronger in. That's what I would say, because that's going to help to, when you focus on that a little bit more, it's going to help you get little bit more even with your other, your other muscles. Keep in mind that another thing too is that your muscles aren't going to be completely balanced all the time. We all can kind of have a little bit of an imbalance in our muscles in some shape or form. Like we can't be perfectly balanced because we're human. So keep that in mind that like for example, with me, I have a certain exercises I do where I'm a little bit weaker than I am in others. You'll notice that too when you're doing exercises that you're a little bit weaker, and that just means you need to focus on that muscle more. That just means you need to build more strength in that muscle. So, again, I have that sort of situation too with having imbalances at times. There's a way to correct them. Again, you just need to focus on those muscles a little bit more and engage those muscles more, especially if you have exercises that are focusing on those particular muscles. Focus on really engaging that muscle a little bit more, that mind muscle connection and things of that nature. That's going to help too. Um, any workouts that primarily target your shoulders, sort of keep those in mind. Focus on really engaging that shoulder muscle, and sort of balancing that out. So, again, I hope that was helpful, Wayne. But that's all I have for you guys today. I hope that you found this helpful and valuable. I hope that it helps you to understand and give you an idea on what these two training methods are, how they can help to sort of understand and know what you need to focus on when it comes to these particular exercises. So, with all that being said, guys, that's all I have for you today. So, again, you can visit my website, bponlinefitness.com. Ton of information related to online coaching. You can sign up for my email newsletter there. You can check out my free fitness blog, and I always try to keep it updated as much as possible. This live stream will actually be on the homepage once I finish this today. So definitely check that out. But that's all I have for you guys. Thank you again for taking the time to watch this, and I hope you found it helpful and valuable. Just reach out if you have any questions about anything I discussed today, or if you have questions on other live streams that I've discussed.